I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I need to get it out there. I need people to understand what it feels like when the people closest to you finally drop their masks and show who they really are. My name's Samantha, I'm 30-3, and I live near Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been married to Eric for 6 years now, and we have a 4-year old son named Owen. I work part-time as a receptionist at a local dental office, while Eric's been doing HVAC work since we first met. He had a steady job, was good with his hands, and wasn't much of a talker. Back then, I actually liked that about him. He felt solid, real. We met at my best friend's wedding. He'd fixed the venue's air conditioning that same day, and we talked during the reception, danced once, and that was it. He called the next morning. I was coming off a messy breakup, and he was. Easy. No games, just straight to the point. I appreciated that directness. We moved fast. Moved in together after 8 months, got engaged by the next year, married 6 months later. When I got pregnant with Owen, though, things started to change. At first, everything seemed normal. Eric appeared excited about becoming a father. But when the morning sickness hit hard and I had to cut my hours at work, he began pulling away. He'd say I was too emotional, always tired. I figured he'd come back around once the baby was born. He didn't. After Owen arrived, it was like I became invisible. Eric spent more time in the garage or claimed he was working late. Looking back now, I put working in air quotes because I honestly don't know what he was really doing during those hours. We barely spoke unless it was about bills or the baby. The only time he really seemed to come alive was when his mother, Marlene, moved in with us. That was supposed to be temporary. She'd had knee surgery and needed help getting around, so we set her up in the basement thinking it would be for a month, maybe 2 at most. That was 2 years ago. Marlene never left, and she made it her personal mission to make me feel like garbage in my own home. She criticized everything I did. How I cook dinner, you really don't season your food, do you? How I clean this floor is still sticky. Even how I dressed Owen, little boys don't need to wear that many colors. It's confusing for them. She had negative comments for absolutely everything, and Eric would just sit there and nod along. Sometimes he'd even laugh at her remarks. There were moments I wondered if I was losing my mind. I'd try to bring it up with Eric, and he'd dismiss me with "she's old school, don't take it so personally." Or worse, "she's just trying to help." If I pushed the issue, we'd end up screaming at each other, and I'd wind up sleeping on the couch with Owen in my arms just so he wouldn't have to hear us fight. It was incredibly lonely. And that loneliness is probably why I didn't notice how bad things had gotten until recently. A few weeks ago, I started feeling off. I was exhausted all the time, even though Owen had finally started sleeping through the night again. I had this weird nausea every morning, and food started tasting strange. It hit me one evening while brushing my teeth. I was late. I didn't say anything at first. I waited a few more days, thinking maybe it was just stress playing tricks on my body. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I decided to talk to Eric about my suspicions. We were in the kitchen one evening. He was scrolling through his phone, half-minute while Marlene grated cheese at the counter. I stood there for a moment, gathering my courage before I finally said it. "I think I might be pregnant." He didn't even look up from his phone. Without missing a beat, he said, "Better hope it's not yours alone this time." I felt like all the air had been knocked out of my lungs. Then Marlene actually laughed a cruel, mocking sound and added, "Let's not repeat past mistakes." She was talking about my son. About Owen. I just stood there, completely frozen. I don't even remember how the rest of that night went. I just remember lying in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, wondering when everything had turned so cold and heartless. The next morning, I took a pregnancy test. Alone. It was positive. I didn't tell anyone. I needed to see a doctor before I made any decisions or announcements. I called my OB-GYN to schedule an appointment, gave them my insurance information like I always did, and the receptionist paused. "I'm sorry, but your policy isn't active. It was terminated earlier this month." I sat there in stunned silence. "What?" "No, my husband's the policyholder. We've always had coverage." She double-checked and gave me the number for our insurance provider. I called immediately. After being on hold for almost an hour, someone finally answered and pulled up her file. The termination request had been submitted by the policyholder. "Who's the policyholder?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Eric," she said, followed by his last name. He had done this. He had actually canceled my insurance, knowing I might be pregnant, knowing I would need medical care. I asked when the policy was terminated. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Before I had even mentioned anything to him about possibly being pregnant, he was already planning something. I don't know if he somehow saw the signs before I did, or if he just wanted to hurt me, but either way, it was completely deliberate. That's when I started putting the pieces together. Eric hadn't touched me in months. I practically had to beg him to spend any time with Owen. But he sure had plenty of time for his phone, for his mysterious work meetings, and for his mother. He didn't want another child not with me anyway. And instead of being honest about it, he decided to make sure I had no support system. No insurance, no doctor, no way to take care of myself without crawling back to him and his mother for help. He wanted control over me. Complete control. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. He was never going to control me again. I was going to make sure he regretted every single thing he'd done to me and our family. And I was going to do it in a way he'd never see coming. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in bed, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling, thinking about how far this situation had deteriorated without me even fully realizing it. I kept replaying his words over and over, better hope it's not yours alone this time. What did that even mean? Was he accusing me of cheating? Was that what this was really about? Or was it just something cruel he said to hurt me? By morning, I was still raw from the emotional impact, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. The fear and confusion were transforming into something else entirely. Anger. Not the kind that makes you yell or throw things. This was quiet, cold, and intensely focused. The kind of anger that makes detailed plans. I called my boss and told her I needed a few days off. She didn't ask questions. I think she could hear something in my voice that told her not to push. I said I had a family emergency, which wasn't a lie. Then I got to work. First, I called the insurance company back and asked for a copy of the termination request. They said they'd email it within 20-4 hours. I told them I needed it immediately and let my voice crack a little. It wasn't even fake crying. I was genuinely upset. They sent it right away. I opened the attachment and saw his signature at the bottom. Eric had physically signed paperwork to remove me from his insurance policy. Dated 3 weeks ago, just like they'd told me. That's when I realized he hadn't just accidentally screwed me over in some moment of spite. He had made a calculated move, and he'd left a paper trail doing it. I forwarded the email to myself and saved it to a USB drive as well. I wasn't taking any chances with losing this evidence. Next, I went through our home office while Eric was at work. I needed to see what else he might be hiding from me. In one of the desk drawers, I found a folder labeled Home Finances. It was full of printed bank statements. Some were from our joint accounts, but others weren't. One account had only his name on it, not a joint account at all. I didn't even know it existed. The balance showed over $6,000. I flipped through the deposit records, finding large cash amounts spread out over several months. One deposit for $3,000 here, another for $20,500 there. He was hiding money from me. I didn't know where it was coming from or why he was stockpiling it, but he was clearly planning something. Probably planning his exit strategy, maybe even a divorce. That's when I realized the insurance cancellation, the secret bank account, and that weird comment about the baby. He was trying to make me look unstable. Like a woman who had cheated, who was trying to trap him with someone else's child, who couldn't even maintain a job or take care of herself properly. I bet he even had a lawyer lined up already. But he didn't know that I knew any of this yet. I hadn't told him about the positive pregnancy test. I hadn't confronted him about the insurance. Instead, I started acting completely normal. Quieter than usual, maybe, but normal. I cooked dinner, folded his laundry, even managed to smile a few times. He had absolutely no idea that I was planning my own strategy. The first real bombshell came 3 days later. I was picking Owen up from her school when one of the other mothers, Tara, pulled me aside. She looked uncomfortable and nervous. "Hey," she said, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "I don't know how to say this, but is everything okay with Eric?" I played dumb. "Why do you ask?" She lowered her voice even more. "I saw him last week at McNally's. He was with some woman. Blonde hair, definitely not you." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral and asked for more details. She explained that she didn't recognize the woman, but it definitely looked like a date. They were sitting close together. He had his hand on her leg. They were laughing and whispering to each other all the intimate things couples do when they think no one's watching. I thanked her for telling me, then drove home in complete silence. Oh, and chatted happily from his car seat about dinosaurs and his day at school. I nodded and smiled at all the right moments, but inside, I was absolutely breaking apart. He was cheating on me. That explained everything: the emotional coldness, the weird comments about the pregnancy, the hidden money. He wanted me gone, but he didn't want to look like the bad guy in the situation. So he was systematically trying to make me appear to be the problem. That night, while Eric was fast asleep, I carefully unlocked his phone using Face ID. I went through his text messages methodically. He'd been clever enough to rename his girlfriend in his contacts as my Casey Disgusting, but not clever enough to actually delete their conversation history. There they were: long, intimate conversations, photos I didn't want to see, and messages that made my blood boil. One text said, "Soon I'll be free from the crazy." Another said, "I told her she might be pregnant." She totally panicked, LOL. My chest felt tight reading that. He had used my body and my emotional reaction as some kind of joke to bond with his side piece. That's when I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I wasn't just going to leave him. I was going to systematically burn down everything he had built, quietly, legally, and with a smile on my face the entire time. I didn't sleep again that night. I just lay there next to him, staring at the back of his head, while Owen slept peacefully down the hall. Eric didn't stir once, probably dreaming about his new girlfriend, the one who thought he was trapped with a crazy, unstable wife. I wasn't crying anymore. I was calculating, planning, strategizing. By morning, I had formulated a comprehensive plan. I wasn't going to confront him directly, not yet. I had to be smarter than that. I needed to stake Wyatt, get everything in place, and let him hang himself with his own rope. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. A real one, not some budget consultation. I didn't have much money up front, but I explained my entire situation quietly and carefully. She asked if I had proof of the insurance cancellation, the text messages, and the hidden bank account. When I told her I had documentation for everything, she said, "You got more evidence than most women do when they start this kind of fight. But you have to be incredibly smart about this. Don't tell him anything. Keep pretending everything's normal. And get copies of absolutely everything you can find." She paused, then added, "We're going to bury him." That was the first time I'd felt genuine hope in weeks. She referred me to a women's clinic that worked with uninsured patients. I scheduled my prenatal appointment for the following week, quietly listed myself as self-pay, and asked for detailed receipts for everything. Every piece of paperwork they gave me went straight into what I started calling my escape binder, hidden in the back of our pantry behind a bag of sugar we never used. Then came the second major twist. One afternoon, Marlene cornered me in the laundry room. I had just pulled a basket of towels out of the dryer when she walked in and closed the door behind her. "I know what you're doing," she said with a cold smile. I didn't respond, just kept folding towels methodically. "You think you're being clever," she continued. "I see the way you're sneaking around," whispering on the phone. "You forget this is my house too." That comment made my stomach turn. I'd always known she felt entitled to our home, but hearing her say it out loud was infuriating. "I always knew you weren't good enough for Eric," she kept going. "You latched onto him because you got pregnant, and now you're trying to do it again." I kept folding, staying silent. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "It won't work this time. He's already filed the paperwork." I turned slowly to face her. "What paperwork?" She smiled like she'd been waiting for me to ask that exact question. "He's divorcing you, sweetheart. And he's going for full custody of Owen." That was the moment I realized I had completely underestimated her. She wasn't just a bitter old woman living off her son's generosity. She was an active participant in this conspiracy. It was all planned: the insurance cancellation, the new bank account, the cheating, the constant insults and emotional abuse, the calculated coldness. Everything. They were building a comprehensive case against me. They wanted to paint me as unstable and unfit, get rid of me entirely, and keep Owen. Probably even keep the house. But they didn't know I had a lawyer. They didn't know I had proof of everything they'd done. And they had absolutely no idea that their carefully constructed plan was about to explode spectacularly in their faces. I stayed completely calm. I looked her directly in the eye and said, "If he files anything, please let me know. I'd love to see exactly what he puts in that paperwork." She looked genuinely uneasy for the first time. Maybe she'd expected me to cry or beg or have some kind of emotional breakdown. Instead, I walked past her and went upstairs without saying another word. Later that week, I discovered that Eric hadn't actually filed for divorce yet, but he had definitely met with a lawyer. I found the email thread on his laptop when he left it open. The attorney had sent him a draft petition, and it was full of outrageous lies about me. It claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I refused to contribute financially to our household, that I was erratic and unpredictable, and that Owen was unsafe with me during my episodes. He was painting a picture of me as some kind of mentally unbalanced woman, the kind who would lose her temper in front of our child, the kind who would be denied custody by any reasonable judge. But here's what Eric didn't know: I had been recording everything. Every cruel comment he made, every cold remark from his mother, every moment they tried to twist into something ugly and use against me. I had audio evidence of all of it. The recording of him saying, "Better hope it's not yours alone." Marlene's laughter when I mentioned the pregnancy. The phone call with the insurance company confirming the cancellation. Screenshots of the messages from his mistress. Even better, I had started seeing a therapist once a week. Not because I needed therapy, though, honestly. Dealing with their abuse probably warranted it, but for documentation purposes. My lawyer had explained that it would help prove I was stable, consistent, and proactive about my mental health. That brings me to the most recent twist in this whole mess. Last weekend, I took Owen to my sister's house for a sleepover. Just the two of us having some aunt and nephew bonding time. Eric didn't even seem to care that we were leaving. He barely said goodbye, probably thrilled to get a weekend off so he could spend time with his other woman. What he didn't realize was that I had made copies of every single file on his laptop the night before we left. All his emails, all the photos, all the dates and timestamps, every single thing he thought he had deleted. I had it all safely stored. While I was at my sister's house, she sat me down with a serious expression and said, "There's something I need to tell you." I didn't want to say anything before because I didn't know how to bring it up. She looked genuinely nervous. Then she told me that she had seen Eric 6 months ago with another woman. Not the blonde from McNally's that Tara had mentioned, this was a brunette. And she looked barely over 20 minus 1 years old. They were at a gas station near Glenpool. My sister saw them laughing together by his truck, and when he opened the door for the girl, he kissed her. Not a quick, friendly kiss either, it was intimate and passionate. He wasn't just cheating on me with one woman. He was cheating on me with at least 2 different women. That's when something clicked into place in my brain. Something snapped into perfect, crystal mokogos. Eric wasn't just trying to leave me or take Owen away from me. He was systematically replacing me. He had already found his next life, a younger woman, a clean slate, a completely rewritten version of himself where he gets to be the good guy who escaped from his crazy, unstable wife and got a second chance at happiness. But he had forgotten something crucial. I still had my name on the mortgage. I still had every receipt, every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence of his betrayal and deception. He wanted to erase me from his life, but he was about to discover that he was the one who was going to disappear. The weekend at my sister's house felt like the calm before a massive storm. I played with Owen, watched cartoons with him, and held him close while he slept. I kept looking at his innocent little face and thinking, this is why I'm doing all of this. This little boy is the only thing that really matters. When we returned home on Sunday, Eric wasn't there. His truck was gone, and Marlene was in the kitchen making one of her terrible casseroles, acting like absolutely nothing had happened. I walked past her without saying a word. She smirked and said, "Rough weekend?" I didn't acknowledge her at all. I just went straight to my room and opened my escape binder. Everything was ready. Every document, every piece of evidence, every legal form was perfectly organized and prepared. Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp, I met my lawyer at the courthouse. She filed multiple petitions simultaneously: divorce papers, a request for full custody of Owen, and an emergency request for a restraining order against both Eric and Marlene for creating a hostile and emotionally abusive living environment for both me and our son. I included the audio recordings of Eric and Marlene mocking me, the insurance cancellation records, the text message screenshots, my therapist's documentation, and my bank statements showing that Eric hadn't contributed to household expenses in over 4 months. Everything was documented, organized, and legally bulletproof. Then we dropped what my lawyer called the nuclear option. We filed a request to freeze Eric's hidden bank account. I had done some detective work and traced the money. That secret account wasn't just personal savings, it was payment from side jobs Eric had been doing under the table. Work he wasn't reporting to his employer or the IRS, money he was trying to keep entirely for himself. That constituted insurance fraud and tax evasion. His employer had no idea he was taking side jobs during work hours. My lawyer contacted their HR department anonymously with all the documentation. They opened an internal investigation immediately. By noon, everything was in motion. The legal machinery was grinding forward, and there was no stopping it. I picked Owen up from preschool and took him straight to my sister's house. I told her to keep him overnight and explained everything that was about to happen. She looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked. "Dead sure," I replied. That night, I went back to the house. Eric was sitting in the living room watching television like it was just another ordinary Monday evening. Marlene was folding laundry nearby. I sat down across from him and said casually, "Did you have a good weekend?" He looked confused. Yeah. Why?" I nodded thoughtfully. "Good? Because it's your last one in this house." He laughed dismissively. "What are you talking about?" That's when I handed him the legal papers. He flipped through them silently at first, his expression gradually changing from confusion to shock to anger. "What the hell is this?" he finally exploded. "You're filing for divorce? Full custody? Are you completely out of your mind?" Marlene jumped up from her chair. "You ungrateful little." I cut her off calmly. "You'll both need to leave immediately. The judge has already granted a temporary restraining order. You cannot legally be in this house anymore. Not around me, and definitely not around Owen." Eric's face went pale. "You're bluffing. This is some kind of joke." I handed him the official court order. The judge's stamp was still fresh. My lawyer had gotten it expedited through the emergency family court system. Marlene's face went from red to completely white. "This is absolutely ridiculous. We practically raised that boy." I looked at her with complete calm and said, "You insulted him. You called him a mistake. You laughed when I said I might be pregnant. You and your son canceled my insurance behind my back and tried to frame me as mentally unstable. You think that constitutes parenting?" Eric turned on me with pure rage. "You're going to regret this decision. I'll take Owen away from you. You think any court is going to side with you over me?" I stared him down without flinching. "They already have." Right at that moment, exactly as I had planned, two sheriff's deputies pulled into our driveway. I had asked them to wait precisely 5 minutes after I served the papers before making their official appearance. "Time's up," I said, standing calmly. They knocked on the door, and I stepped aside to let them in. The deputy read the restraining order aloud and informed Eric and Marlene that they had exactly 30 minutes to pack their essential belongings and leave the premises. Marlene tried everything, screaming, crying, even faking what appeared to be an asthma attack. Nothing worked. They were legally required to leave, and the deputies made sure they did. That night, I changed every lock in the house. 3 days later, the situation got even better. Eric's company fired him. The HR department had confirmed that he was taking unauthorized side jobs during work hours and pocketing the cash, which violated his employment contract. They also reported him to the IRS for failing to declare the additional income. The secret bank account was frozen by court order, and every dollar in it was flagged for investigation by multiple agencies. Oh, and remember that younger girlfriend, the blonde one? She found out about the other woman, the brunette from Glenpool, when my sister reached out to her with screenshots of Eric's dating profiles and photos. Turns out she thought she was the only one he was seeing, just like I had thought I was the only one he was married to. Both went and dumped him within 20-4 hours of each other. No job, no home, no girlfriends, no son, no money. The family court ruled completely in my favor. I was granted full custody of Owen, with Eric allowed only supervised visitation if he could prove he had stable housing and a legitimate source of income. Given his current circumstances, that seemed highly unlikely. Marlene tried to contest the restraining order, claiming I was being emotionally biased and vindictive. The judge played the audio recording of her laughing when I announced my possible pregnancy. The entire courtroom went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The judge looked directly at her and said, "Ma'am, you're fortunate you're not being investigated for emotional abuse of a minor child." The restraining order was upheld indefinitely. Eric moved into a cheap motel outside Sepulpa. He tried texting me a few times, but I never responded. One of his last messages simply said, "You ruined my life." I smiled when I read that, because the truth is so much simpler than his accusation. No, Eric, I didn't ruin your life. You ruined your own life with your lies, your cheating, your financial fraud, and your complete disrespect for your family. All I did was show the world exactly who you really were. Owen and I are doing just fine now. We have our home, we have our peace, and we have our future ahead of us. And every single day, I'm grateful that I was smart enough to fight back instead of just accepting the life he tried to force on me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything.